David MacLeod. It's hard to know where to start to introduce David because he's sort of like a sustainability renaissance man in a way. He's he's been awarded a local environmental heroes award. He's involved in so many groups. He was one of the people who helped the transition towns organization in our area produce an event that drew 800 people in our small town. That's a lot. um, David, I've known him for many years, and we worked as a team together putting on different kinds of events. And one of the things I appreciate about David is he's erudite. He's well read without being dry and boring. He's he he can go deep into integral theory or all kinds of things, and I just love how his mind just keeps expanding to incorporate more and more things. And I have a lot of fun with David. David is also a musician, and he can tell you other things about himself as well. But really happy David said yes to presenting here at our event. So, David, if I missed anything, please fill it in. And I'm really happy to have you here.
That's great, Alan. Really happy to be here, and so
Let's
excited to be
see.
a part of this event. The microphone volume might be a little low right now because I'm going to do something in a second. I think I told Tess and the group on the first day that I felt like I was in the right place because so many of the things presenters were saying, things going on, seem to match up with what I'm trying to do here today. And there's a lot of material that I have, and it's been difficult to collate and organize it into a cohesive presentation that fits within the time frame. Everything is skimming in a way, and but I'm really trying to embody what I'm trying to learn, which is to live in dynamic flow. And so there may be parts of this that are a bit choppy, and but I'm hoping you go with me on that, and hoping to feel your support through the presentation. If you can turn your cameras on so we can all see each other, that would be great. If you can't do that, I know there's reasons why, many different reasons why people either cannot do that or it's not really suiting them at this time. That's fine. But I just want us to all feel some connection here, feel the flow of dynamic energy between us. And to start off, I'm going to call in on my horn. If there are any of you that are super sensitive to sound, you can have your hand on the volume or, turn it off for a second. That'll be followed by some warmer sounds. And you can turn your volume back up after I play the horn if that's an issue for you. Just be aware of that. And here we go. Just let those sounds sink in. Let it sink into your body as we become present with one another here. Just connect to your heart energy and the other people in the room. Come present to this space. I'm going to open with reading a short quote. I hope it's short. I was originally going to read a full page, so I'm sparing you from that. But this kind of sets the context of why I feel this topic is important to me. A study of humanity and nature is a study of systems of energy, materials, money, and information. Therefore, we approach nature and people by studying energy systems networks. The idea is to use general systems principles to understand and predict what is possible for society and environment. The small areas of nature, the large panoramas that include civilizations, and the whole biosphere of Earth and the miniature worlds of ecological microcosms are similar. All use energy resources to produce, consume, recycle, and sustain. In earlier times, energy available to human management was insufficient to control the biosphere, and people were protected in their ignorance by the great stabilizing storages of the oceans and the atmosphere. In recent years, however, the accelerating growth of fossil fuel use has allowed civilization to interfere with life support, outdistancing our knowledge of the consequences. And so we're here to talk about energy and power and integral permaculture consideration.
David, sorry to interrupt, but we're getting a little feedback that your voice is very soft for some people on the call. Is it possible to increase the volume? Or bring your mic closer? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, possibly. We can
Imagine we're all over the world and you have to really...
Is this any better?
We are all over the world.
Is it any better now?
Yes, that's better.
Yes.
Okay. There's a number of different soundscapes I'm planning to use, and so I'm trying to modulate as best as possible. And I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Energy and power and integral permaculture exploration. These are some of the issues that concerned me about 15 years ago, and why I started to get involved in community and helped to organize Transition Whatcom, which is a local transition initiative to address these issues. And when this slide was originally created about 10 years ago, actually I borrowed this slide from someone else, and which a lot of my presentation is a lot of borrowing and bringing together and coalescing input from different voices. This slide originally had peak oil, global warming, and economic instability as the three parts of the triangle, and things have worsened since then, so I've kind of increased the intensity of the language to match what I think is current reality. And these result in what we call the long emergency, and that's the title of a book by James Howard Kunstler. So what we want to look at are opportunities for spiritual and social transformation. The world in crisis and chaos is an opportunity for social and spiritual transformation. And so this presentation is informed by David Holmgren and his essay called Energy and Permaculture. H.T. Odom, who is a pioneer who did work on systems ecology. The quote I opened with was from H.T. Odom. Taoism and the Three Treasures, and how Taoism teaches us about how to work with energy on a personal level, as well as on all scales. And Jean Gebser, who is a cultural philosopher who wrote about structures of consciousness. And so we're going to be looking at that and finding some parallels. And finally, pattern dynamics, which is a pattern language that for me is informing my view, which is of a naturalistic, semiotic, non-dual cosmology. Naturalistic meaning it doesn't separate between spirit and materialism, but it combines both. There's not a spiritual idealism. There's not a focus on the supernatural, but there is a role for spirit. Semiotic basically means there's a lot of relationality in all parts of all systems. Exchange of information and energy, signals and interpretation. So energy, what is it? David Holmgren defined energy as a quantity that flows through all processes measured by the amount of heat it becomes. H.T. Odom said energy can be measured in such units as the calorie, the joule, the BTU, and the erg. Tim Winton, who is the founder of Pattern Dynamics, pointed out that energy has what he said is a very curious ontological status. You know, what is it exactly? Because we can't reach out and touch it and hold it and look at it, but we know it by its effects. So I really prefer Tim's definition of energy, and this is what I'm using today. Energy is any vibratory force that makes change happen. And so what is power? Well, H.T. Odom pointed out that in science and engineering, power is defined precisely in terms of measurable units as the rate of flow of useful energy. Power equals flow times force. Very interesting definition from Merriam-Webster that says power is the ability to act or produce an effect, or the capacity for being acted upon or undergoing an effect. This definition was pointed out in an essay by a theologian, philosopher named Bernard Loomer, in an essay he called Two Conceptions of Power, which we'll be coming back to later in the presentation. But if you can kind of tuck that into the back of your mind as power as the ability to act or produce an effect, and the capacity for being acted upon or undergoing an effect. Okay, pattern dynamics. This is not a pattern dynamics presentation, but just to give you a very small context of what's kind of behind and influencing me. Pattern dynamics is systems thinking that facilitates organizational sustainability for a thriving planetary civilization. And it addresses complexity. The key to complexity is systems thinking. The key to systems thinking is patterns, and the key to patterns is forming them into a language. It's based on three simple ideas. Sustainable natural patterns. This allows us to see more. The power of language. Having a language allows us to share more. And putting them together into a sustainability pattern language allows us to integrate for deeper purpose. And here are 56 natural patterns that have been identified. We're not going to go through these, but we will be touching on some of these patterns. Okay, so the basic foundation of this presentation started with an essay that David Holmgren wrote, I believe it was 1994. So this was about maybe about 5 years before he published his book on permaculture, Principles and Pathways Beyond Sustainability. But many years after he'd written the first permaculture book called Permaculture 1. The complexity and severity of environmental and economic crises make it more imperative than ever before that we have a common currency for understanding the changes around us and assessing the available options. That currency is energy. We're going to come back to this slide. So Alan gave a presentation yesterday on Ken Wilber's integral theory, which is referred to often as AQUAL, all quadrants, all levels, all lines, all states, all types. And he talked about in the lower right quadrant is where we put systems thinking and how systems fit into these four quadrants. One of my critiques is the fundamental, often in looking at the lower right quadrant, we talk about technology and economics. But what's the foundation that supports technology and economics? It's available energy. So we need to be aware of that and give some attention to that. It's what makes possible any technology and economy in the lower right quadrant. And I say an appropriate energy literacy can also form the basis of appropriate normative behaviors in the lower left quadrant, which is when we get into culture. So David Holmgren's book, Permaculture, Principles and Pathways Beyond Sustainability, I find to be very foundational. David Holmgren was actually one of the founders of permaculture. His mentor was Bill Mollison, but David Holmgren was like the theorist. He was inspired by Bill Mollison, and then Bill Mollison kind of took that, and he was also the, not only the inspiration, but the practical presenter and really popularizer. And David Holmgren kind of faded into the background for a while. But he did write that first book, Permaculture 1. And one of the really key influences for David Holmgren was H.T. Odom. I forgot I had this slide in here. This is Rob Hopkins, founder of Transition Towns. And he's talking about Holmgren's book. He says, quite simply, the most important and far-reaching book written in the last 15 years. I often likened it to a really rich chocolate cake. It is very dense and rich, and you have to take it in thin slices and then go lie down and digest them for a while. A little Holmgren goes a long way, but it positions permaculture as the design approach for a peak oil world, the essential toolkit for energy descent. So speaking of permaculture, I should define what I mean by permaculture. And I had a handy dandy definition. Which I've apparently misplaced. But permaculture is basically, I was going to quote David Holmgren directly, but permaculture is a design science. And it's a way to look at systems to make them more sustainable. But it's not only about a style of organic gardening per se. A lot of people will just associate it with the technique for growing things. But it's really a design science that can be applied across many, many levels. And that's what I like to focus on. Consider myself a social permaculturist. Okay, so H.T. Odom, a big influence on David Holmgren, quoted heavily in that first book, Permaculture 1, and also quoted heavily and referenced in his later book, and in this essay he wrote on energy and permaculture. H.T. Odom lived from 1924 through 2002. He wrote a number of books, the most important ones to me, around 1970, 1971, a little bit before the Permaculture 1 book came out. Environment, Power, and Society. Then The Energy Basis for Man and Nature, 1976. A book on environmental accounting came along. A Prosperous Way Down came out in the early 90s, I believe, around the same time as David Holmgren's book on permaculture. And then finally, an update of Environment, Power, and Society for the 21st Century, the Hierarchy of Energy, was published. There was an update of that first book we looked at. It was published in 2002, which is, I believe, 2002, which was the year of his death. It actually came out after his death, and some of his top students helped to edit this book. So what Holmgren says about Odum is that the 1976 book, Energy Basis for Man and Nature, is a very important book which we should read and understand. It should be read and understood by all permaculturists. Otherwise, it's very easy to be misled into developing and proposing systems and lifestyles that will consume rather than produce energy storages. It's a unique tool for understanding and decision making, more in tune with the rules of the natural world. And high energy industrial society is revealed as a quite natural and I can't even see all of my slide here to read it, a quite natural response to fossil fuel abundance, but maladapted in every way to a low energy future. So I'm sorry, I'm trying to go through these slides fairly quickly. Like I said, there's lots of material, but these are some of the things that Holmgren identified that Odum touched on in his work that is important. The world system as energy system networks, which analyzes ecosystem elements and processes in terms of energy flows, storages, transformations, feedbacks, and sinks. So there's a lot of information in this presentation. If there's some key takeaways, this is one of them. Energy flows, it stores, it transforms, it feeds back, and it sinks across all different types of systems. And it incorporates non-living and living elements, both of the natural environment, human systems and economies included. The complexity and severity of environmental and economic crises make it more imperative than ever before that we have a common currency for understanding the changes around us and assessing the available options. That currency is energy. I'm repeating this slide for emphasis. Okay, so it's important to understand the laws of energy, especially the first and the second. First law, the law of conservation of energy, and energy is neither created nor destroyed. The energy entering the system should be accounted for either as being stored there or as flowing out. And then the second law is the law of degradation of energy. In all processes, some of the energy loses its ability to do work and is degraded in quality. The tendency of potential energy to be used up and degraded is described as entropy, which is simply a measure of how much the energy of atoms and molecules become more spread out in a process. Now, Odum's work is based on a third principle, which has sometimes been referred to as the fourth law of thermodynamics. He says that the system that gets the most energy and uses it most effectively survives in competition with other systems. Those systems that survive in competition among alternative choices are those that develop more power, rate of energy flow, more power inflow, and use it to meet the needs of survival. Now, this may sound very dominating. Competition, survival, you may be thinking of Darwin and some of the associations that have been made. But really, it's not just about domination. There are healthy ways to express power, which is one of the key points of this presentation. So, what are some of those healthy ways? And healthy by, well, we'll see how this plays out. They do this by developing storage of high quality energy. So here's an example of currently structured economic capitalism where we're storing energy. And here's an example of storing energy of a more natural, smaller scale system. That's energy being stored in hay. It's an embodied energy. They do this by feeding back work from the storages to increase inflows. So we see here a offshore oil platform, deep water in the oceans, think about how much energy it takes to build this and to maintain it. So they're making a profit from getting the oil, but they have to make enough profit to be able to support their system that works to get more. So they're feeding back some of their profit into building their infrastructure. On a smaller and more natural scale, this is a photo I took when I was living at Inspiration Farm about 10 years ago, where they had goats, and they're harvesting goat milk, but some of that energy that they're harvesting needs to be fed back to keep the goats healthy. The third way they do this to maintain power is by recycling materials as needed. So recycling is what we think of in our suburban environments. And out in the forest floor, this is how the forest does it. Number 4 is organizing control mechanisms that keep the system adapted and stable. This is how our industrial society will organize the control mechanism of the energy flowing through a river. And this is in natural systems. There's balances that need to be maintained in ecological systems. They set up exchanges with other systems to supply special energy needs. So we have, our natural or our capitalist system of exchange that we use money to buy things, or we can barter. This is a photo of the Okanagan Family Barter Fair. Number 6, contributing useful work to the surrounding environment, which helps maintain favorable conditions. So one example is microorganisms maintaining favorable conditions in the soil and helping actually control the climate by doing so. Or mountain and forest and streams helping to maintain favorable conditions in that environmental situation. Here's a meme I just created the other day. Our friend Chris Wolf, who actually hosted the Kalapa experience that we had beginning of the year, I guess it was. And she posted this photo of herself planting trees. And she made these comments, which I then turned into a meme, and it's actually spreading pretty fast. Oops. I can't see the top of the quote, but on my screen, I wonder if I can move that. So she's talking about our governmental authorities trying to address climate change, and they only seem to emphasize reducing emissions, which is important, but where does nature store carbon, she asks. In trees and in soil. Policy needs to emphasize 1, protecting all forests and healthy soil we already have. 2, planting millions of new trees, reforestation. And 3, building soil through regenerative agriculture and reforestation and restoration. Then she says, thanks for coming to my TED Talk. I changed that to thanks for coming to my Chris Talk. And back to David Holmgren, he says, if there is a single most important insight for permaculture from Odom's work, it is that solar energy and its derivatives are our only sustainable source of life. The most productive sustainable systems imaginable may be able to provide for the needs of 5 or even 10 billion people. However, they would never sustain large-scale cities, a global economy, and Western material affluence, even if all the conventional energy conservation strategies were to be adopted. This is a bitter pill to swallow for Westerners, raised on the notion of material progress. The transition from an unsustainable fossil fuel-based economy back to a solar-based agriculture and forestry economy will involve the application of the embodied energy that we inherit from industrial culture. This embodied energy is contained within a vast array of things, infrastructure, cultural processes, and ideas, mostly inappropriately configured for the solar economy. It is the task of our age to take this great wealth and reconfigure and apply it to the development of sustainable systems. Okay, so that's my summary of David Holmgren's article, Energy and Permaculture. You can look it up online to read the whole thing. It is a bit dense, which is why I tried to make it into a presentation and cover the highlights, but it's well worth reading. And so this was my original slide. Peak oil, global warming, economic instability. We're facing the long emergency that we need to plan and prepare for. What can we do? We can drastically reduce our use of fossil fuel energy, slow down and simplify, drop into our bodies in this present moment, and with very refined awareness, be judicious with how we allocate the precious resources of gross, subtle, and causal energies. So far we've been mostly talking about gross energy, but more subtle and causal energies follow these same patterns, and we can think about how we use those energies more effectively as some of these gross energies become more scarce and become less wise for us to continue to use at the rate that we've been doing. And so we can cultivate inner spiritual resources that will assist in dealing with whatever comes our way. Vicki Robin, who I think I saw on at least one of the sessions in the Kalapa experience.
Yes.
She said, if you can actually live with the conditions of our time, it activates an inspired commitment. So again, how does energy manifest? Well, Howard Odum told us that it manifests in energy flows, stores, transformations, feedbacks, and sinks. I noticed in starting to study Qigong that they talk about the same types of ways the energy manifests. They talk about cultivating energy, circulating energy, the energy flow, storing energy, transforming energy, exchanging energy, and clearing energy. And in pattern dynamics, we see these patterns as universal patterns in all systems. And so these are just diagrams to just help us to be able to visualize that these patterns exist. So we have the pattern of energy, flow, resource or storage, transformity, feedback, and then I'm using the pattern of the pulse to show both growth and decline. So the decline is where energy sinks. That's entropy. In all systems, we see entropy happening. And in all systems, we see pulses of energy at very small scales and very large scales. So I believe right now we're going through our society is basically reached its peak and we're on the downslope. And so that's part of what explains the current chaos you see in 2020, for example. And I'm sorry to say, I don't think that, 2020 is going to be behind us and then everything's going to be necessarily rosy in 2021. So we need to figure out how we can process and deal with all the change that's happening. When we know how to work with energy, then we can shift and transform. And so this shifts the presentation to talking about some of these issues. And when I was starting to study Chinese ways of looking at this through Taoism, and through practices like Qigong. I notice they talk about 3 basic forms of energy called Jing, Qi, and Shen, where Jing refers to vitality and essence. It's the energy of your body. It's the energy of your sexual expression. It's been likened to like biomechanical energy. It gets stored in your lower dantian, which is the belly area. It answers the question, where am I? Where am I? I'm right here. Right here in this body, in this place. And it's also connected to the energy of the earth. Qi has been defined as life force energy. It's formless, it's animating energy. It's like bioelectrical energy. It gets stored in the middle dantian. It's in the heart area. Dantian, by the way, means elixir field, field of elixir, place of process and transformation. It helps us answer the question, what do I want? And it connects with our emotions. And it also relates to nature, our relationships, other people, the natural world, our interaction with the natural world. And then the third one is Shen, mind/spirit. It's more the mental, but there's an additional component there that includes connection to spirit. It involves attention, intention, and awareness. Located in the upper dantian, you could say focus point, what's been called the third eye. And it answers the question, who am I? Or attempts to answer it. It's connected to the universal energy. So we get connected to Earth, to nature, and to the universe. And from here, I think, just a couple of quotes here. The idea that imagination leads the mind leads the Qi. Spirit is sustained by energy. Energy is obtained from the transformation of essence. Jing to Qi to Shen is like ice to water to vapor. They're different, but they're all the same substance. So it's different expressions of the same energy. Now I think I will stop the share there. So Taoism is about our relationship to power. It's tapping into the power and the potential that we have within ourselves. It's a different skill set. It relates to relaxing and receiving, doing less to accomplish more, and embodying the concept of effortlessness. And what I'd like to do now is share some of these exercises with you. I think it's a good time for us to stand up and do some practice, do some embodiment. So I am correlating pattern dynamics practice with what you could call the chakras. So we want to touch in with some natural patterns, and we want to embody them with movement. So we're going to start with the pattern called rhythm. And stand up with your feet firmly on ground, about hip width apart, and just find your center. Take a few breaths. Now we're going to be drawing up energy from the earth in this first one. And so the hands are going to glide across and out, turn, under, and then breathe in as you pull your hands up and feel that energy coming up your legs and into your pelvic floor. So breathe out as hands go out and breathe in. Just connect to the earth energy and feel it pulling up. Breathing in. Connect to that earth energy. And this is the rhythm pattern. Rhythm is a fundamental aspect related to time. And this is also the pattern of energy connecting with your own resonance. Your own resonating body connecting to the energy of the earth. Let's pause here. One hand over the other. Now we move into the polarity pattern. So we're going to separate yin from yang, our masculine polarity from our feminine polarity. No matter which sex you are, you have both of these polarities existing within you. So we're going to breathe out as we spread our arms apart. So the lower hand goes up, and look to that lower hand that goes up, and then it comes back down. That lower hand then comes back down onto the top, and you're bringing this polarities back into integration and balance. And then we'll do it again, go the other way. The lower hand goes up, top hand goes down. Turn towards that lower hand that's going up. Then bring the hands back down and integrate and balance these polarities. Now we'll breathe out as our hands go apart. Breathe in as they come together. Now sense you as the whole as you come together. And then as you go apart, sense the part of you that's masculine and the part of you the other way that's feminine. And then the integration and balance as they come together. Polarity, a fundamental pattern in all systems. So now we're going to move up to the pattern of structure. And we're going to do a movement called moving like a river. So sense the structure located in your belly. This is one of your power places. And it's holding it's holding the enduring framework of your structure. But you're doing this movement, which is like a tree in the wind. It's very flexible. And you feel confident your structure is stable, that you can maintain flexibility and creativity. And just feel the ease of that flow that goes back and forth as you sway in the wind. But be appreciative of that enduring structure that's keeping you together and stable. Feet are still planted very firmly into the earth. Now bring your arms into this movement. Just make big circles. Feel the flow of that. And from here we'll go into the next pattern located in the heart. So move your consciousness to your heart area and let your hands glide across the front of your heart one at a time. And the other hand just kind of follows it down below with your lower dantian. So one hand is in your middle dantian. It's called cloudy hands. Just moving the clouds across your heart. And it's clearing away anything that needs to be let go of. Any emotional energy that's been problematic. It's clearing away, but it's also allowing energy to flow in and through your heart. Feel connected to yourself as you do this. Feel connected to the nature that's around you. Feel connected to the other people on this session. You can speed up. Speeding up really helps to clear. And then you can slow down, which really helps to connect and feel the energy that you want to cultivate in your heart. Just feel a lightness there. Let's slow down. And bring your feet in just a little bit. Now we'll go into the creativity pattern that's located in the throat. So to do this, we're going to do a movement called the fountain. You're going to bring your hands together, the backs of your hands together, float them up your body. You come to your throat, and then like a fountain, let that sprout forward. And you can bend your knees as you're coming down. And then breathe up and feel the energy rising up through your body and coming out your throat chakra to express your creativity. This is elegant expression of creativity. You can also sense just the fountain, like a fountain of water that's bubbling up. Feel that energy rise up from the earth, up through your body, out through your throat chakra. Expression of creativity. Breathe in as you come up, breathe out and release. Release anything you don't need back to the ground and into the earth for composting. That's useful. The earth is going to make use of that to compost and create better energy that's available for all of us. But there's stuff you don't need anymore, so you can let go and compost. Now we're going to turn this into another pattern as we move up to the third eye. And we're going to take our hands and curl them towards the inner, starting with your belly and coming up your body. This pattern is called Lao Tzu strokes his beard. But as we come up, we're going to take it all the way up to the third eye and let your fingers, your pointing fingers, emerge and just kind of tune into your third eye and your connection to your mental consciousness here. And then let that release and float away. This is the pattern of dynamic patterns emerging. So it's part of your mental consciousness that you're able to direct, you're able to think, to imagine, to intend. So you're bringing this energy up to your third eye. You're able to create dynamic patterns. You're able to notice them and nurture them and let them manifest. And again, to release what's no longer necessary from sometimes a busy mental energy. And again, you breathe in as you come up and release. Now, let's slow down and hold the energy right in front of your lower dantian as we prepare for the next pattern, which is located in your crown. This is the pattern of void, the pattern of emptiness, what the Chinese Taoists called Tzu. And this pattern of emptiness is we no longer need to be having things figured out. All of our mental patterning can be just set aside for the moment. And breathe in as you bring your arms outward, up and outward, and pull in the energy from the universe into your crown. And just rest the tips of your fingers on the top of your head and feel that universal energy. You can imagine a violet light pouring into the crown of your head. Take a breath in and out here. And the next time on your out breath, pull your arms together and come down the center of your body. And just feel that universal power flowing down the center of your body. So breathe in, pull in the universal energy. Let it land on the crown of your head in void and emptiness. Just enjoy the feeling of that energy in your crown. Take a breath in, release, let it float down the center of your body and back down into the earth. As we repeat. Come down, release. Just feel what you feel, notice what you feel. And our final pattern is connecting to Source. Source is the origin of order, the fundamental pattern of the universe, the fundamental pattern behind all patterns. And what we're going to do here is we're going to create a figure 8 with our hands. And we're just going to flow with that. This figure 8 signifies parts and wholes coming together in integrated balance and unity. It's not one, it's not two. It's a non-dual reality connection with Source. And you can just play with this. It doesn't matter exactly how you do it. Let your body sway. You can go faster, you can go slower, what feels right to you. You can be a little bit creative with it. Just connect to Source and how does it want to manifest for you. It's carving out a figure 8. Slow it down. When you're ready, draw that into a little ball in between your hands. Pull it into the body, into your belly, into your lower dantian. Bring your feet together. Close your eyes. Feel what you feel. Let your knees be a little bit soft. And here we can go into what's called bamboo in the wind. Let your body sway if it wants to. And just connect to the energy that you've cultivated in these few minutes. When you're ready, open your eyes slowly and see if you can carry some of that energy that you've cultivated with you as we proceed onwards. And I'd like to open it up for questions if there are any questions that anybody would like to ask or share how it's going.
This is Serena. Hi, David.
Hi, Serena.
That was so delicious.
Mm.
And I am having this beautiful experience of just really appreciating how you've put
David,
this
I
all
have a
together.
comment and I'm hesitating because my internet. Okay, here we go.
I think Serena was sharing
Oh,
now.
my internet's doing something funky. You go ahead.
Go ahead, Serena.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I wanted to share how I've known David for a few years, and I feel like getting to be in this presentation and feel the deliciousness that you just shared with us and the thinking behind it, and then bringing it into this embodied visceral experience of those concepts is just so utterly sweet and valuable to have that tangibly embodied felt experience of these concepts.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm just so grateful that we got to meet and that I've been able to pick up on some of these things from you throughout the years and then get to be here to see this whole picture that you've put the recipe together in such a beautiful meal.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Serena.
Thank you.
Anybody else would like? Does anybody else would like to share anything?
David, there's something in the chat.
Okay.
And
I think they might be. Yeah, I think actually there were a few things in there. And actually, I had the same question as Angela and Kate in terms of wanting to be able to do it again. So I have a spinal condition that creates a lot of unusual sensations in my body. Oh, hello. And it was a really emotional experience with this because I experience it a lot of the times a pain condition, where it's rather intense and it almost feels like I'm being tattooed just constantly on the side of my arms and between my shoulder blades and then on various parts of my body. Sometimes it's just like I'm being punched. Sometimes it's like I'm being grabbed. They're just really, for a long time before I knew that there was actually something in there, I thought I was being haunted, and I'm not superstitious in any way. So it was just like, I don't have any other explanation for why this is happening. And what part of what it is that there's a small fluid-filled cyst in my spine that disrupts the flow of cerebral spinal fluid. And I had a really, I'm a skeptic. I don't really dive into a lot of unusual things because I was raised in the Bible Belt, and we were taught that all of these things are witchcraft. So and as I was doing it, I've been dealing with some pain symptoms this morning, and I'm going to get very emotional, so just be with me in that. I was dealing with some pain symptoms this morning that were just very intense, especially my hands, my arms. It's almost like neuropathy, where it's like I'm cold in my bones and I can put heat on it, I can put anything on it, and I still can't feel it. And as I was moving, I could feel the air flowing over my skin, and it was soothing. In a way that I wasn't expecting. And I'm wondering if you had anything to, with all of that information, if there was anything that was tickled, if you had any ideas, thoughts, reflections. I'm dumbfounded personally. Yeah, just throw that out there. Thank you. And yes, how can we find out where to learn more about this?
How do you find out to learn more about this? Well, it depends what this part you're referring to.
Sure.
I'm kind of melding together a number of influences that, you could look up David Holmgren and research his work, or Howard Odom. And then this part here about the movement practices. I've been learning Qigong from Lee Holden, who's a nationally known teacher of Qigong, and that's been the root of the practice. But then I'm correlating it with pattern dynamics, which is not super well known, developed by my friend and mentor Tim Winton. And that's just kind of coming from my own intuitions and connecting of dots to connect them to these natural patterns that exist in all systems, and finding movements that match as well as I can. And at the first Kalapa weekend, we did an embodied practice covering these patterns, and we were in circles to try to experience what it was like to be in a system together. And we were doing different movements that were really more interactive. And now in this situation, we're doing individual movements, but we're doing it together. So, if you want to learn more about that, I guess just get in touch with me and we'll see what develops, because this is the first time I've, done this publicly.
I appreciate you being vulnerable with us in that. It was really, in no uncertain terms, it's been a very difficult morning. And that is I think the first semblance of relief. I wasn't going to come, and that was beautifully unexpected. So thank you.
You're welcome. And in terms of the other questions you had, I don't know if I don't feel really prepared to speculate too much on, what's going on for you, but it is, we're trying to cultivate flow of energy, and it both releases energy that we're holding that we no longer need, and it's bringing in good energy, and it's trying to connect to the energy of the earth, the energy of nature, the energy of the universe. And whether you believe, in these like literal
Sure.
powers, or how you put that, excuse me, like I said, where I'm coming from is what I said earlier is a naturalistic approach. It's not based on supernaturalism, but and this is what I'm finding that I like about Taoism, is that it really is based on what's observed in nature. And I too was raised as a very conservative Christian, and when I was first introduced to like moving energy in my body, I thought, well, that's really woo-woo, and I don't really believe in that. But I took the approach of fake it until you make it. And this is, again, part of this mental energy of what we have capable of, the imagination. So whether that's the placebo effect, I can't say for sure exactly what is happening. But I've noticed over time, if I just act as if I believed it was real, then what am I going to experience? And I experience the flow of energy to varying degrees. And that's useful.
Absolutely.
So I'll probably leave it at that. You had a question about what is meant by essence?
Yes. Yeah, it was in there was specifically a slide of quotes. And it said, I was really peeking at this. I think it was, I can tell you exactly which quote it was, I think.
Well, I know there was a slide.
Yeah, spirit is sustained by energy, and energy is obtained from the transformation of essence.
Right. And so essence, and that goes back to another slide where this Chinese word called Jing
Oh, okay. So
And
it connected with specifically, so the transformation of that biomechanical energy is the idea
yes,
behind that.
exactly. It's related to the body, the energy that's physically. It's most of the Jing, Qi, and Shen. Jing is most related to physical, biological energy in your body. It's
Mm,
related to sexual energy. Um, it's found in. It's been said that it's related to the energy that comes through semen and blood. Um, um, and what's rooted in the lower Dantian. Um, and some of these Chinese words are difficult to translate, and it's often best just to stay with the Chinese word and to get a sense of it.
yeah,
That's
sure.
the Jing energy that we're talking about. I hope that helps.
Yeah,
So
well, sure. I appreciate you giving space to that. Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you for the thoughtful and very grounded response. I appreciate it.
I have a blog, Integral Permaculture.
Beautiful.
Would anyone
Thank
else
you.
like to share?
Yeah,
Yeah, Angela.
yeah. Well, thank you so much. And I just, uh, I feel so affected by the multidimensional coverage of your approach, and it feels so holistic and balanced. And I just want to say that I feel so gratified that you you have the intellectual piece so strongly, and then the embodiment and the emotional and the connected place pieces, and to put it into practice. It was just so lovely. I got so much out of that, and I just want to thank you for that, because it's not that often in our world right now where that level of integration is happening, and that's what we so need. And um, I'm a very sensitive soul, and I've been running energy, cosmic and earth energy, and doing a lot with all of that, and for many years. And to me, it's so real. It is so profoundly real. And Lena, I wanted to say I'm so sorry that you're hurting so much, and I know very much what that's like. And it's really real on multiple levels in my experience: physical, emotional, spiritual. I've had a lot of experiences with past life aspects of myself, or young child aspects, and it's like a opportunity to heal that, but it's hard. And just wanted to say thanks for sharing that, and I really wish you well. And um, yeah, so thank you, David, too. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Angela. Any other comments, questions?
One more quick thing, David. I had this thought about, like, possibly if you would be interested in doing that practice and leading some of us through it for several weeks, so we could learn it, and maybe we could even donate, for your time, or that was just an idea that I had, because I would love that.
Wow. Thank you, Angela. I will try to set that up just because you asked. That's a great motivation for me to have that, encouragement that people are finding it valuable and want to repeat it. Thank you. Okay. We don't have any more questions. It's time to move into the next part. The third part is another very dense piece. Comes from Jean Gebser, who was a cultural philosopher who lived through the 2 world wars, and was a big influence on Ken Wilber's work in terms of what Ken Wilber developed as levels or stages. But Jean Gebser called them, he didn't like the concept of levels or this idea of progression, He called them structures of consciousness that don't develop into the other structures, but they mutate. And I need just a couple of minutes to kind of get my thoughts together and organize how I'm going to do this next piece. So let's just take a couple minute break, and then we'll just be right back in 1 or 2 minutes. So we're moving into a section to discuss consciousness. Now you might think about, what does consciousness mean to you? There's lots of different definitions of consciousness. So the way that Gene Gebser described it, he described it as consciousness is the ability to survey those interconnections which constitute us, and it includes a function which reacts to the visible course of events in reality. So it's very much about, in my mind, it's very much about our awareness, how we interpret reality. Lee Holden, the Qigong teacher I spoke of, he said, our senses reach out into the world and describe back to us what the world is like. So that's kind of the approach that we're going to be taking when we discuss consciousness. But Gene Gebser, who lived from 1905 to 1973, he spoke of it as kind of like an archaeology of consciousness, that it developed over time. And again, I use these words carefully because it's true that they developed, and that they can be placed in a time sequence, and that there's a sense where it has more to offer than the previous one. But it's not all about progressing forward. It's as much about a regression from origin. We're losing something, but we're also gaining something new. He saw consciousness as a phenomenological awareness conditioned by our environment, that we affect the world affects us. Information required to solve problems of daily existence evolves with constantly changing physical and environmental and economic environment. He found 4 distinct structures of consciousness that have mutated over time that he identified, and then he identified a possible 5th structure of consciousness, which is just starting to emerge. It was just starting to emerge in his lifetime and is still, I believe, in the emerging phase. We're not there yet. And so it's hard to talk about, to be really definitive in what we define as the integral structure of consciousness. So Gebser used the word integral to describe this 5th structure of consciousness. He didn't have an integral theory in the way that Ken Wilber does, but it was a structure of consciousness. The consciousness structures, he didn't like the word evolution, but he liked the word mutation. He didn't like levels or stages, but structures. Not progress, not regress, both. First structure was, he called the archaic, 0 dimensionality. And then comes the magic structure, 1-dimensional. Then the mythical structure came along, 2-dimensional, polarities. And then the mental rational, 3-dimensional. And finally, the proposed 5th structure, which he called aperspectival, with 4 dimensions. And he said that the double task, no, he didn't say this. This is a quote from my friend Jeremy Johnson, who said the double task of the integral age is both the reintegration of the twilight worlds and the concretion, not of space, but of time. Concretion, to make real in our lives. And one of the things, I shared earlier, that I felt like I was in the right place with this Kalapa experience, because so many of the presentations that I've observed are really relating to one or more of these structures of consciousness. On the first day, Susan Powell was sharing about the medicine wheel, and it really touched into the magic structure of consciousness. And then there's been a lot of authentic relating and different kind of exercises that are really touching into the mythical consciousness that really emphasizes polarities and relationships and support. And then, of course, the mental comes into it in terms of, you know, this is the structure we mostly live in today, and so we talk and we analyze. Now, according to Gebser, this current structure we're in, he called the mental rational structure of consciousness, is currently in its deficient and exhausted stage. We want to focus on the efficient and what's really useful to us about the structure, but also to recognize that it is currently being exhausted. And I think this is why we have such a problem with, you know, what's fake news? What is post-truth? How do we know what true is anymore? And how do we come to agreements about that? So Gebser felt that what it's required to bring about an integral structure of consciousness is the structures mutate, they don't evolve, and so they don't just proceed from the exhausted one, but a mutation springs forth. Mutation requires chaos and breakdown of the existing structure. So unfortunately, we have to go through a period of chaos to be able to let go and to be able to let in what comes next and is new. So one of my people that I've really enjoyed reading, Peter Pogani, he said, a historical crisis of epic proportions will be what it will take to shift our consciousness structure to integral. But when we get there, it will favor cooperation over competition, acquiescence over indifference, a responsible sociability over isolation, and an integrative open-mindedness in comparison to stubborn dogmatism and altruism over hedonism. Now let's dive into these structures.
Well, I want to encourage people to check out the Authentic Relating Games coming up. And after that is Lifestyle Design Masterclass, where we're going to be looking at sort of an overview of tools in the realm of lifestyle design, also known as visioning and manifesting. And I was debating what to do, and I think I want to give people a big gift in that class of we'll actually go through a process that helps people identify their life purpose and design the vision for their ideal life. So I'm going to teach people a simple process that then they can do again later.
Okay, so we're going to do some guided meditations to try to embody and experience these structures of consciousness. It may be a little bit challenging to do it so quickly, but I hope you can just get a taste. But I think you're already getting a taste by this whole weekend experience. And the different presenters are touching into these structures, so you're already getting a taste. But I want to start with the archaic structure of consciousness. Jean Gebser quotes Zhang Tzu, who said, "Dreamlessly the true men of earlier time slept." And Gebser used this to kind of help identify this archaic structure. This is mankind that's not fully upright yet. This is the way, way, way back. So think about zero dimensionality and no differentiation between earth and sky. This is living in the garden. Inception. What Jean Gebser called the ever-present origin. It's still within us. Okay, so close your eyes. Let your mental consciousness just come to the front of your forehead And see if you can drop that down the front of your body. Feel that mental consciousness just falling away, falling down your body, down through your throat, down through your heart center, down to your belly, and then finally down into your pelvic floor. And let that mental consciousness fade away. Now think of a newborn coming into this world, very undifferentiated, very reflexive, instinctual functioning. Feel yourself into your pelvic floor. Sense what it might be like there when there's just this direct sensing. Not many contours. Just feel into that. Note for yourself, what kind of quality would you name that is predominant in your experience right now? Just let that register. It might be just subtlety, fluidity, ambiguity, whatever comes up. Now see if you can sense and connect to a sense of oneness with all that is. This is your ever-present origin. There's really no sense of you here, just an undifferentiated presence. In the garden, one with all. There's nothing to do. There's nowhere to go. There are no wants. There are no needs. Now when you're ready, gently come back up and allow your mental consciousness to reemerge, even as you now carry this archaic consciousness with you. This level of a consciousness was estimated to have occurred 4 million to 2 million years ago. Now we move on. Oh, I wanted to talk about power, since this presentation is related to energy and power. What is the archaic relationship to power? Well, there's no differentiation, no separate sense of self, no needs, no wants, as I said. And so no real need to express or experience power, but you're held in power that's not your own. But you're in a kind of a subsistence rather than an existence, meaning you really don't have a separate sense of self yet. Once one leaves the garden, then power is needed to continue to survive. Right? To exist in the world as a separate self, we need to maintain our sources of energy. We need to do all those things that we talked about in the first part of the presentation to find ways to maximize power in our existence, to be able to continue to exist and to express ourselves in the world. And so we're going to move on quickly to the magic structure. It's about one-dimensionality, simple awareness of objects, a sense of will, and a sense of self-differentiating from and a controlling of the forces of nature. You may have heard the phrase Homo faber. This is man the maker. Start to experience making things and the power that comes from that, the emergence of power. And here is a great capacity for subtle sensing, and sense of hearing is primary. So let's see if we can experience the magic structure. I invite you to stand up, find a good stance, feet hip width apart, close your eyes, and allow again your mental consciousness structure to drop down the front of your body all the way into your belly and back into your pelvic floor where we were. And let this thinking, planning, and directive consciousness of your mental energy fade away into the background. And touch in again with this archaic consciousness and the feeling of undifferentiated oneness. And now imagine your consciousness moving up from your pelvic floor into your belly. Sense your consciousness here. Sense an emerging differentiation as you move from zero dimensionality to a one-dimensional sense of self. Sense an emerging differentiation as you move from zero dimensionality to a one-dimensional sense of self. This is an emerging sense of self and an emergence of tribal consciousness. Let your sense of hearing come to the fore. To hear with attention, obedience, or compliance. To heed, to attend, to mind, to hark. So the ear is a very important organ in the magic structure, as is what Gebser called the viscera, or the belly region. We're being called to listen with careful attention to find the resonance in our body, and specifically in our gut feelings, to help us determine when to let happen and when to make happen. So our power here in the magic structure is to sense with our gut and to respond. Creativity emerges and we can make happen. We can exercise power and might. We discover agency and ability to exist, to hold our niche, to protect, to meet needs, to thrive. We discover a sense of self, a sense of will, a sense of having what belongs to us. Yet we're still contained within the confines of our tribe, and we find our power in spellcasting and manifesting. This is, however, a linear or a unilateral sense of power. Okay, so now we're going to take a few minutes, and as you stand with your eyes closed, if this works out well, I'm going to put on some background sound that's going to start with some rattles and shaking of rattles. It could be fairly powerful, so be prepared for that. And then that will fade away into some nature sounds, and we'll just be with that for a while. But as you listen to the sound of the rattle, if you can find an even pulse with your knees and let yourself drop into that rhythm. And keep your eyes closed. See if you can drop into this percussive background sound. And then with the nature sounds, what do you notice in your body? Just track the texture, the quality of your experience. When you're ready, you can open your eyes and let your consciousness come back up the front of your body, back to your mental consciousness for a brief moment before we drop back down again. So the magic structure is very different from the archaic, more differentiation. But then evolution does move on, and we move into the mythic structure of consciousness. Mythical is about two-dimensionality and polarity. Time is experienced in cycles. So now we have what Gebser called temporicity. We have night and we have day. We have seasons. It's about the subjective sense of self versus or with the other. And myth, we're making meaning from our subjective experience now in story and song. And this is very much about imagination and symbolism. So moving quickly here, let's see if we can have an experience of the mythic structure. So close your eyes, and you can be standing or sitting at this point. And drop your mental consciousness again. Move it to the front of your forehead and drop it down the front of your body, all the way down into your belly. Let this thinking, planning, and directive consciousness fade away. Touching again with your magic consciousness and the feeling of your one-dimensional sense of self. And now imagine your consciousness moving up from your belly into your heart. Sense your consciousness here. Sense an emerging differentiation as you move from one-dimensionality to a two-dimensional polarity. Tune into your heart and the growing ability to feel emotion, a growing sense of self, and yet a connection to what is other. This is about correlating. Correlating is associated or correlated with the mythical structure with its attention on polarities, exchange, complementarity. Part of our knowing or our power, when to let happen, when to make happen, often involves careful attention to where we can find mutual relationships or connections between beings and between things, rather than always seeing oppositions that have to be blocked or defended. So here we experience the mythic power. What corresponds or conforms with us is the mythic power of soul or psyche. This is the power of exchange with others. It is power with. It's what Bernard Loomer called relational power, with the emphasis on polarity. The power that comes from balancing and integrating polarities of yin and yang. The power of myth, storytelling. Relational power is the power to have an effect on others, but it's also the power to undergo an effect, as we learn from Webster's dictionary. To be affected while maintaining our niche, holding our ground. To be affected. To be flexible. To expand and contract as the situation calls for. You are like bamboo in the wind, strong yet flexible, You bend but do not break. So now I invite you to open your eyes. And if you don't already have the screen on gallery view, I invite you to put it on gallery view. And if you are available, to turn your cameras on so other people can see you. I would like you to take a few minutes. So take a few minutes here and look around at the others on this call. Let it register. I'm sorry I got carried away with getting the sound a little too loud there. But let it register that you are here and there are other people with you in the room. Look around, see how that feels. Let that register. What do you feel in your body? We are here as ourselves. And there's others here with us in the room right now. This is different from oneness with the tribe. This is about you as an individual. But there's still a togetherness. There's an engagement. And with that, enjoy looking at others on this call, those you're connected with, as part of this experience. Thank you, my beautiful fellow humans. So let's bring our consciousness back up into our heads. The next structure of consciousness to emerge came about with the Greek, beginning with the Greek civilization, what Gebser identified as the mental rational structure of consciousness. We now have three dimensions. We have the ability to see perspectives. Time is experienced as linear, so we enter clock time instead of just cycles that continually repeat. There's a lot more attention to forward movement. So this is why we get these concepts of progress and development. There's now a new spatial awareness. There tends to be a focus more on parts than on the whole, and the sense of vision becomes primary. And the really positive aspect of this is the ability to analyze, to plan, and direct. But you can see what Gebser was getting at in terms of we're further away from origin. We're further away from connection with our bodies, even as new skills come along. Now, to briefly experience the mental rational in a guided meditation. Well, this is where we already mostly reside, so it shouldn't be too difficult, but I do invite you to take a few moments here with me to explore this. So close your eyes and visualize yourself eating breakfast this morning. So you can probably remember what you had for breakfast and should be able to easily kind of just place yourself back there. This is your mental consciousness ability to move and direct, to imagine, to project. So just notice how easy it is to put yourself in the past. And imagine yourself eating your breakfast. Now imagine yourself eating something different. Now you're eating pancakes with maple syrup. Okay, now imagine yourself eating chocolate cake and ice cream. How does that taste? Now imagine that Santa Claus is sitting across the table from you, eating breakfast with you. Now I'd like you to project into the future a bit. What is something you imagine yourself doing tomorrow? Okay, you can open your eyes. It's just a brief exploration and giving some attention. This is the mental structure, ability to pay attention to different things, ability to imagine, to intend, to attend, to intend, to imagine. And then when we connect that with some of our magic structure, ability to manifest, then we get some power. The powers associated with the mental structure are these powers of directed, discursive thought, seeing and conceptualizing. We're in linear time, and so we can direct, we can allow long-term planning and organizing. Now, when we combine these new mental abilities with condensed fossil fuel availability and borrowing from magic the maker ethic and the unilateral structure of power over dynamic, we can do some pretty powerful things and also some pretty destructive things. And we could spend a lot of time, as Gebser does, in analyzing, the deficiencies of what he calls the mental rational structure. When you get into the rational, he actually sees that as the beginning of a deficiency. We're spending so much time atomizing, breaking apart ratios, and that we need to bring back a balance of connecting to wholeness and to origin. So we need to wrap things up, but thinking of the future integral epoch, it's not an inevitable outcome of a linear growth. It's a possible scenario that might emerge after some serious series of contractions. What the things that Gebser did talk about in terms of the integral, sometimes he had to invent words to try to, because again, we're trying to explain a different consciousness structure with our mental structure, which is difficult. But he talked about it being four-dimensional. The solid sphere is the shape. He used words like irrational and aperspectival, which means, it doesn't mean the opposite of rational. It doesn't mean irrational or without perspective. But the A means without the one-sidedness. It's kind of a non-dual rationality. It includes the rational and it includes more than the rational. Time is experienced as an intensity. So it goes to qualitative time and not clock time. I'll just say this, to be integrated and to be integral starts with presence. And it starts with integrating all of these past structures we've been talking about. It's not just going back to the past, but that's a big part of it, is to be able to really touch in with and bring into concretion an authentic relationship with these different structures and being able to access them and being able to connect with the different powers that are available in those different structures. And I am going to stop there. And are there any comments or questions before we wrap this up?
Thank you so much, David. Yeah, let's have a show of twinkle hands or silent clapping or whatever you want to do for. Oh, why don't we open up our mics here and let David hear it? Yay! Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
That was freaking awesome! Unbelievable! Thank you so much.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, thank you, David. I just read something from the chat from Whitney, who had to hop off, but she said, thank you so much. This has been beautiful and so informative. And I just want to say I really appreciate the creativity and the range that you brought to this session with us. And thanks for going out on a limb and trying a bunch of different things on Zoom. It always makes it so much more rich in experience. Is there maybe one question or comment for David before we hop off? I want to give people a couple of minutes to take a break before they head into the next session. And one last comment from Bonnie on the chat. Really powerful, David. Can't wait to listen and experience the recording. Definitely interested in doing more work with you. So soak up on positive feedback.
One quick thing. I just feel like this was such an amazing presentation, and I have this desire that it could go out to the world more. And it's so dense, and there's so much instruction for humanity. And I just want to say that, like, I wish so many people could hear this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, it is very dense, so much packed in. Each one of these pieces could be a weekend in itself. Yeah, wish I had time to full-time devote to developing all the little interesting nooks and crannies of the aspects that are contained in this. We'll see how it develops. But thank you, Angela. And if anyone wants to contact me, miles58@yahoo.com. And thanks to Angela's spurring, I will put together some kind of a class that will work on these themes.
Oh, exciting. A class is born. Mm-hmm. So thank you again, David, so much. And thank you all of you for joining us. And I wish you well in the rest of your day here at Kalapa and into the evening. And enjoy. Bye for now.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
I did see Lena raise. Go ahead, Lena, and then I'll read the. Oh,
and then